Hi there, this is Carla Laborio. I am going to show you exactly how I would dissect a prompt and how I would conference with a student, especially if their essay is not a 10, what I would focus on for their glows and their grows. I'm going to show you exactly the questions that I would ask on sticky notes to get them to get a 10. All right, so if that's what you're looking for, stay tuned and I bet you're going to learn something that you can use with your students. Let me know if this video helps you. Okay, so first of all, dissecting the prompt. Every time I give an ECR prompt, I go through this process so that it will become almost like an automatic habit when students see an ECR. They do this in groups, we do this shared, they do it independently. So the first thing is to circle, underline, highlight the keywords in the question. So it always starts with read the selection, the promise, based on the information, write a response to the following. Here comes the question. Explain how one girl's promise impacts her city and the people who live there. Write a well organized informational composition that uses specific text evidence to support your answer. When they see those bullet points, that's a red flag that it's an ECR. Okay. So now, what are the important words? How, promise, one girl, impacts. Impacts is kind of a hard word. If your students get content clarifiers, when they click on that word impacts, it's going to give them a simplified vocabulary word that will pop up or picture. So you have to be the content clarifiers for your students. So what you can do is you can model and ask students to help you do this, but say, what does that mean impacts? She impacts her city. What's another word for that? And you can ask them, and they might share with you changes. She changes her city in a positive way. That's what impact means. They don't know, you can help them with that word. City, they could draw a little quick pic of the city. People, they could draw stick people real quick right above it. That ensures that they are understanding the question. I would also have them underline or highlight informational composition. That tells you whether it's going to be informational or argumentative. Another thing you can do is get your students to rephrase the question. What's the question asking? What's another way of saying that? How did one girl change her city and the people who live there in a positive way? Okay, so that's the question. Once they've dissected the prompt, then they might write the essay. So this is an actual student that I had in my class, and I hope to answer these questions during this quick video training. How do you get the student to improve? How do you conference? What questions do you ask? So I'm going to read to you what the student wrote. Feel free to pause it and read it to yourself. So the girl's promise impacted her city and the people because the people were grumpy and the city was ugly. By planting trees and making the city prettier, it made the people more happier. The text says she lived in a city where it was mean, hard, and ugly, where nothing grew and people never smiled. This shows that after trees were planted, the city was ugly and the people were grumpy. But by planting trees, it made the city look beautiful. According to the text, it says the city had streets that were dried like dust and cracked by heat and cold where nothing ever grew. This is why the city was ruined, because the people did not take good care of the city, but they should have taken good care of the city or plant any trees. Lastly, the story says she found a lady with a bag full of acorns and she started planting them. This shows that she started planting the acorns, the people started to have more joy all around cities. Without a doubt, I know that the promise impacted the city because it made people cheerful and make the city nice to look at. Okay, so let's start with the positives. I would first tell the student what they did well. You always want to start with the positives. I would say, great job answering both parts of the question, which was tough. They could have just answered about the city or just answered about the people. I would say to the student, you did a great job restating and answering the question, and you answered both parts of the question. That is awesome. So you definitely get the point for that. Let's look at your evidence. Your evidence backs up the answer. This evidence where you quoted she lived in a city where it was mean, hard, and ugly, where nothing grew and people never smiled, that matches what you said in your answer that the city was ugly. So that really backs it up. That matches and that supports your answer. I would also tell the student, great job writing transitions and sentence starters. I love how you said the text says, this shows, according to the text, lastly, the story says, without a doubt. That really made your writing flow when you added in those transitions. And I also love how you wrote paragraphs, even though we don't need to tell the kids this. TA doesn't score on whether it's in paragraphs or not, but I would still congratulate the student for writing in paragraphs just because I think that's a great skill to have. Okay, so now what do you say to get your student to do a little bit better? What can you work on? So this student's particular grows or goals might be just to elaborate and explain. And I would just pick one or two goals. Don't pick a whole bunch. And notice I'm not talking about editing. I'm just talking about revising. Okay, so let's look at paragraph 2. Paragraph 2, the student wrote, the text says she lived in a city where it was mean, hard, and ugly, where nothing grew and people never smiled. This shows that after trees were planted, the city was ugly. I would have the student read that sentence and I would say, does that make sense? Does that make sense to say after trees were planted, the city was ugly? Is that the word you meant to say there? And then hopefully they would say, no, I meant to say before the trees were planted, the city was ugly. So that's one change. Another change is you could ask the student, how did the trees change their mood? They wrote, the people were grumpy, but by planting trees, it made the city look beautiful. How did the trees change their mood? And the student might say, well, because now they could have picnics with their friends, and the trees made them happy because they looked pretty, and it made them feel more relaxed and more happy to see the beautiful scenery. Okay, write that. That explains how the trees change their mood. And so just getting them to say it out loud and then write it. Okay, third paragraph. According to the text, it says the city had streets that were dried like dust and cracked by heat and cold where nothing ever grew. This is why the city was ruined, because the people did not take good care of the city, but they should have taken good care of the city or plant any trees. So there's a few words in there that don't really make sense. Getting them to read it out loud, they will hopefully fix that. And obviously there's a period missing, but that's something you could also mention. Why should they take care of the city and plant trees? I would ask the student that. Why should they do that? And then whatever they answer, that's the explain. And the next paragraph. Lastly, the story says she found a lady with a bag full of acorns and she started planting them. This shows that she started planting the acorns, that when she started planting the acorns, the people started to have more joy all around cities. I would say, how do you know the people had joy? Can you find evidence about this? Does it say that they were smiling and running around in the streets? What does it say? How do you know that they felt joy? And that's what they could add to their sentence to elaborate and to explain a little bit better. Without a doubt, I know that the promise impacted the city because it made people cheerful and make the city nice to look at. It made the city nice to look at. So there's definitely some editing issues here that you could talk about after they fix the revising. They could go back and fix those. But overall, like, we're talking about the difference between maybe a 6 or a 7, how you would get it to a 9 or a 10. And so this student is probably a meat student, but we're talking about how to get them to the masters, how to get them to that higher level. Is you could pre-write these questions on sticky notes, or you could do it while you're conferencing with them. But by asking these specific questions, your student is going to be naturally elaborating and explaining. So I'm going to be sending this out, and I hope that this video helps you to teach your students and to conference with them. If you like this video, let me know. Send me an email back or make a comment. All right. Have a great day. Bye.